right. What's good, people? Let me get this together here. Hope everybody's doing all right. Shout out to those of you who came through a little early. All right. Shout out to good brother Malika. What's good? Code Father. Grab Second Gear. Pirate. What's up? We got Ro. What's up? I did watch the Michael movie. I did not do a review, though. Kind of forgot about that. Captives. What's up? We got CJ Marsh. What's happening? Let me see. Paul, what's going on? Cynical, what's happening? Layman's Journal, good to see you, man. Y'all make sure you support the Layman's Journal channel. Definitely sign up for his Patreon. Good brothers putting in good work over there, right? AH, what's happening? Everett, Spain Man, what's good with you? Got Leals in there. Donnie, on the clock, what's going on? We got Gitmo, we got Ghetto User. What's happening, Ghetto User? Hurricane, Adrian. Let's see. Yeah, I don't know what Tila was. She definitely didn't look white, though. She had something going on, but we'll look it up in a second. Cerebro, what's up? CJ Marsh jumping in with the donations. Much appreciated. Make sure y'all do the same. Like, share, subscribe, join, donate, hit the hype, support the show. You know what I mean? This is where black male justice advocates uplift black men and boys using critical analysis. So let's go ahead and do that. You can donate with the, the Cash App, PayPal, Venmo. Of course, you can do it right here on YouTube. But you could also sign up for the Patreon, either for the Onyx Report or for, the Institute for Black Male Studies. So support the channel. And let's continue to do that. Uncle Ben, what's going on? Let me see. We got Lotus Scholar. We got Dastardly. Lewis, what's up? Tony. Let's see here. Let me see. I don't know how to pronounce that. APAD, I don't know how to. But what's up? Shambe, I believe it is. What's happening? Cameron, what's up, man? And I Am Waffles, what's happening? Now, this is going to be a little different. Obviously, I don't have a team up. I didn't know what to expect with this film. So I just went to, my son and I just grabbed some tickets, went and checked it out. No fanfare for this one. I wasn't sure. I thought from the trailers it was going to be one way. But if any of you have seen it, let me know. If you want to join the discussion, you're welcome to come up. I'm just going to walk us through a little bit. I'm not going to do a blow for blow, scene for scene. But I can't exactly say there won't be any spoilers. So if you don't want to know anything about the film, you may want to check out, come back later after you see it. It's entirely up to you, because I will likely be bringing up moments. But for the most part, I'm just going to give you my overall impression and some of the key things that I saw take place. And like I said, anybody willing to come up, just let me know. The only requirement is that you need to have seen it. Go from there. Donnie says, I loved He-Man as a child. That Maltese cross on his chest never occurred to me. There was a lot. When you go back and watch some of the stuff we watched in the 80s, there were problems, man. There were all kind of problems with some of the stuff we grew up with. We just didn't know. You know what I mean? But yeah, so Uncle Ben says He-Man was before his time, and that's understandable. Like, I'm 51. He-Man came out my 4th grade year. And I remember it was a big deal, too, because we had seen the commercials. There was a lot of hype with that. And then when we heard there was going to be a cartoon, we were out of our minds. And I remember my mother put me in like this after school program at this woman's house because we had just moved. From the school I'd gone to from kindergarten to 3rd grade. So we were now in this white neighborhood. I didn't know anybody. Went to school, and I want to say, yeah, this was, I started going the very first day of school to this kid's house that I didn't know, this white family. And I remember they had this huge TV, and the very first day He-Man played, we watched it on that, and we lost our ever-loving minds. I mean, if it was He-Man, if it was Transformers, that's all you had to say. And so, we lost it. And I've been a He-Man fan ever since. So you're talking about 40 plus years of fandom. I'm a geek. I'm into sci-fi stuff. You can tell it is what it is. Now, I'm not going to pull it down But I will share with you, I have about 4 He-Man swords, and one of them is on the wall, and I'm not going to put down. But yeah, this was the golden era for cartoons, and obviously it had a lot to do with Reagan finally doing away with the limitations of what they could do in children's programming. Because essentially all our favorite cartoons were basically commercials. They were just toy commercials. Once George Lucas broke the mold with Star Wars toys and the movies being a vehicle for selling toys, everybody was trying to jump on board. He made so much money from that. Everybody jumped on board. And that really, in and of itself, spawned a lot of the 1980s as it relates to after school cartoons and Saturday morning cartoons. Those were huge. You know what I mean? And so for the most part, every television show, every cartoon we loved was, hawking toys. That's really what it came down to. And of course, we weren't upset about that because we loved the toys too, for the most part. And it made Christmases, crazy. You know what I mean? But for me as a little kid, it was a wonderful time. You know what I mean? I used to love getting excited. And I used to have collections, of everything we're talking about. From every line that I collected, you could count them up and you'd share them with, you'd meet up with your boys and you guys would count who had what and so on and so forth. But usually if you were, kind of in the class strata I was, the big stuff you didn't have access to, the castles and all that kind of stuff. If you got it for Christmas, you were lucky. Otherwise, you kind of got some of the lower end stuff, but every now and again you'd collect a few higher items and it was exciting. But if you grew up with money, you got to do all of that, And so when I used to play Pop Warner football, we won, we got to play in the championships. And what that was for us, I was in San Jose. They brought us to LA and we literally stayed at the other players' houses. And these were mostly well-to-do white kids. So I'm going in, staying in their houses, and they had everything imaginable as far as the entire collections. And that was how I got to see a lot of the big stuff that we couldn't afford. So I say that to say, just so you understand me a little better, part of the reason I still collect Transformers, swords, all that kind of stuff is I collect the things that I couldn't afford and didn't have access to then. But not just the exact things, the upgraded versions of those things. And of course, when it comes to swords, none of that was really available to us. Shout out to CJ Marsh. He says, I had a Teddy Ruxpin. I didn't get the Bigfoot. I didn't go that far. I might have been a little older than you. But yeah, somebody said Mattel and Kenner. Absolutely. Those were the big ones. Voltron. Man, I just picked up a Voltron yesterday, in fact. This really upgraded version one that I just picked up. This hasn't gotten here yet, but it's dope. But yeah, I used to love Voltron. Not so much the vehicle ones. I was into the Lion one, used to love Mask, definitely had some of those toys, watched the cartoon. Saturday mornings were a godsend, man. You get your bowl of cereal and your body was primed. Like I couldn't get up early for shit the entire week, but Saturday morning, I knew exactly when to get up. You know what I mean? There were cartoons I didn't care for that I just waited till they were over, but I got up right at the perfect time for the cartoons I wanted. Watching cartoons after school was damn near a religion unto itself. So you managed to figure out how to play outside and yet watch your cartoons, because in the 80s, of course, there was no rewind. There was no, and shit, there was a G.I. Joe special, I think it was, that I had to go to the bathroom right at the significant end buildup, and it took me decades to actually finish that damn movie because, you didn't always get to see the ones you wanted to when you wanted to. You had to be there. TV played. You were either watching it or you weren't. That was it. There wasn't a lot of flexibility there. Hold on, let me see. Lewis says Mask was the shit. It was. Rock says, I still post the G.I. Joe carrier on my mom's page every Black Friday. Okay. I had Castle Grayskull. I did. I didn't have Snake Mountain. We couldn't afford it, but I had Castle Grayskull, and that was my joint for a minute there. 80s cartoons was a big display of masculinity for us. Absolutely. There were whole, you had some kind of a framework for masculinity with that. Now is all kind of questions, and we're going to get into that in a minute. Let me see. So Jake says, I wonder if they're going to take He-Man down the new Punisher and Superman route, a more masculine approach. Yeah, we'll talk about that. Silver Surfer. Yep. Doug, I used to read comics, but at the time I'd never seen a comic book store. So I just got comics from the local liquor store, wherever they may have had them on a rack. And you were lucky if they kept collecting them so you could have a whole series. But, yeah. Let me see. Somebody said Dr. L is in the house. All right, there he goes. Shout out to Dr. L. I'll support the Dr. L channel. He said, I had a bunch of G.I. Joe and Transformers still collecting. Yes, indeed. Still do. Absolutely still do. As a matter of fact, just still have my Starscream. You know what I'm saying? But this version was so pretty, I didn't even transform it. I just had to get it. I got all kind of Megatrons and Optimuses or Optimi. I don't know what you call them. So I still collect this stuff. As a matter of fact, here now, I got 4 swords. I'm gonna show you 3 of them. There's one on the wall right behind me. It's right underneath the Thundercat sword, so you can see the Thundercat symbol, and you can see the He-Man sword. I picked that up a couple years ago. But this one I purchased. I never liked the original sword design, but I purchased it just out of respect for the classic. I didn't know it wasn't metal when I bought it, but it's okay. As an artist, I never really liked it, and it wasn't the sword that was in the little mini comic books that came with He-Man. That was beautiful, but they ended up making it differently for the TV show. So I actually went another route. Now, this one I just managed to get in the other day. This is the 87 version with Dolph Lundgren in the film. And even though at the time many of us were quite disappointed in the film, we were happy that we got a He-Man. And I thought the sword was beautiful. I just don't think the film made much sense, because they didn't really use any of the source material, which is what pissed us off a lot. And this is going to be a recurring theme today when I say that when films are made in geek culture and you have no respect or appreciation for the source material, you end up kind of making fun of the major fan base that supports it. And my attitude is, if you don't take it seriously, then why are you even taking the assignment? I mean, it's one of the issues that's been coming up with the whole Green Lantern series that's about to come out, where they're showing you these trailers and they don't want to show the green. None of the characters wears the suits. And there was some talk about the director, I believe it was, saying that he didn't like Green Lanterns. He didn't like the color. And I'm like, get the fuck out of here then. Don't do it. Because at the end of the day, if you don't respect the material, then you're just going to make a farce out of what you make. Like if you go watch the, not the Hobbit. Well, yeah, it's the Hobbit, but the whole series under Tolkien, they take it seriously. Everybody in that universe takes it seriously, and thus it's a better watching experience. They, even if they may poke jabs here and there, they're real subtle. Most people wouldn't catch it if they did. But the last thing you want to do is create a whole series where you make fun of the base material, and thus you end up making fun of the population that's coming to support it. So in and of itself, I think it's a problem. Now, before I saw the film, I decided that I did like the sword. No matter if the film was going to be good or bad, as much as I didn't like the original design, I liked what they did with it for this movie. I did. I thought it was beautifully done. So I did pick this one up, and I have no regrets on purchasing the sword. I thought it was a beautiful piece. I still think it's a beautiful piece. And you can find a lot of this stuff on eBay. You got to kind of shop for the deal you want. I even picked up, this is from Castlevania. This is Alucard's sword. Went ahead and picked up the metal version of it. But I have, like I said, I have about 4 He-Man swords. So I'm a fan. And much of that started when I first, as an artist, was looking at Frank Frazetta paintings, which you can't see, but I have all over my office. And that meant I fell in love with Conan, which meant I fell in love with He-Man, and I went down the whole rabbit hole just because of that. So I see people pointing out Hot Wheels, G.I. Joe. Yeah. That was it. The 80s was definitely that time. That and playing outside. Because after you watched your Saturday morning cartoons, you ate your big bowl of cereal, you went outside and you basically, it was like a time warp. You disappeared until the lights came on and you made it home. And we had a ball, sometimes doing nothing. Sometimes we couldn't think of what to do. Sometimes we played, baseball, basketball, football all day long. We made up games, but it's a very different culture. I noticed when by the time my son was coming up, they stopped going outside. Everybody started playing video games right around the same time. Dr. L says, I'm trying to get the old school stuff. I need one more Dinobot. Yeah, man, eBay. I picked up some of the old stuff. Sometimes I get the new stuff. Let me see. I will say this was my favorite piece as a kid. Sorry about that. Hit the wrong button. All right. This was the jewel in my collection as a kid. In Transformers universe, it was Jetfire. Here, we know that this was a Veritech in the Robotech series. And so since the Robotech series was, at least as far as I knew, was hard to get hold of, I went ahead and bought it and played with it both ways. And I fell in love with Robotech. That was the first cartoon I watched where characters actually died. And yeah, so they're talking about, I've been hearing rumors where they're supposed to be doing a live action Macross. They've been talking that mess for years. We'll see if they can finally get it in order. But Jetfire was my absolute favorite. That was one of the big boxes I got for like Christmas one year, and I lost my mind. I loved it, and I never let go of it. I actually repurchased it because mine was so beat up, and I still have the original, but I repurchased it just so I'd have a cleaner version. But man, that was one of my absolute favorites. So Robotech was definitely one of those series when characters started dying. Oh man, it was crazy. My first, let me see. So Blood Boiling says my first Transformers action figure was Jetfire. Yep. My first one was Jazz. And what's really kind of cool is I got him before the cartoon. So when the cartoon came out, I didn't know Jazz was being played by a black man, until I heard his voice. And I knew his voice because I'd seen him in so much stuff. How am I blanking on his name right now? I can see Scatman Crothers. Scatman Crothers, man. When he played Jazz, I was like, so my first Transformer was the first black one, and I was digging it, But once I saw Jetfire in the store and I recognized it from the Robotech series, I fell in love. What's up, Dead Set? I see you in there, man. So definitely a toy fan. I'm gonna drop the link for anybody, I would say, who either saw He-Man or at least for the next few minutes was deep in the 80s toy culture, or just, really play culture, period. Whether, because we could talk about mongoose bikes, we could talk about, there's all kind of stuff going on when we were kids that I really regret my son not being able to experience because the culture shifted. I used to have to fight to keep him outside, whereas back in the day, my mother, if she wanted me home before the lights came on, she had to go look for me. I don't care if it was a junkyard, an empty street, we made up games. It was just a very different culture. So anyway, that said, let's go to some of the core of it. Let's check out the film information. So I saw the trailer for this, as most of you did, a few months ago, and it was a pretty big deal. It was a pretty big deal because it looked like for the first time they were going to take this seriously. The 1987 movie starring Dolph Lundgren. I watched it again the other night. It wasn't as bad as I remember. It was just that I was so frustrated as a kid that they just kind of jettisoned the source material that I didn't appreciate it. But a lot of us love Dolph Lundgren because he played such an excellent role in Rocky IV. We were conflicted because he killed, my boy, Apollo Creed, but he looked the part. Malika, is that you?
Yeah, this is me. How you doing?
Oh, good, man. What's up with you?
Not much, man. Just chilling.
Oh man, they dropping Transformer names. Y'all got me buzzed. You're talking about Laserbeak and oh man, I had all of that. Soundwave, shit. I got a Soundwave over here. I can't reach though, but yeah. But how you been, man? You were you deep into play culture in the '80s, or where were you at?
Oh, come on. You know I was, bro. You know I definitely was.
What was your primary collection? What were you into?
I was a Star Wars geek, man.
Ah, okay, okay.
I
You know
needed
why?
to. Okay.
You know why I wasn't. It wasn't because I didn't like it. It was because I couldn't afford all of the different sets and ships and stuff. We couldn't afford it, and there was so much, and so I couldn't keep up with it, and my family weren't buying those things for me. But it wasn't because I didn't like it. I just couldn't afford it.
Remember the movie Fox and the Hound Dog in the 80s?
He said, "Son, man." Yes, I do remember that.
All
Yeah.
right. That came out around the time of my birthday in July.
Uh huh.
And this was like around 1981, 82. And my mom and my grandmother said, "What do you want for your birthday?" All I want was the Millennium Falcon.
Ooh, yeah, man.
So growing up with my mom, we would take the bus in Philly and the sub downtown to Kitty City. So my mom is taking me out. All I was worrying about was getting this Millennium Falcon.
Uh,
So we get it, and back then they didn't have big bags. They would use twine around it and use that little fake handle that they would put on it.
mm.
So I'm about 7 to 8 years old, and that box is just as big as me.
Right,
So
right.
I already had Chewbacca, but I had to have the Bespin Han. I had to have Lando Calrissian.
Yep.
I had to have the Bespin Leia, right? So my mom was like, "Do you want to go get something to eat?" I'm like, "Nope." "Do you want to go see Fox and the Hound Dog?" "Nope." She's like, "You just want to take your ass, go back and play with this." I was like, "Yep." So I'm holding this box on the sub. I'm holding this box on the bus.
Uh-huh.
Like I'm the president that got the button to the detonator to the MX missiles, right? So I get this home. My grandmother's like, "Where he's at?" My mom said, "He's in the living room."
Uh,
Man, you want to talk about in a whole different world,
yeah, man.
being happy.
Yep. Yep.
And you just don't start playing with that. I bring down everything. I bring down the X-Wing fighter. I bring down the TIE fighter.
Yes.
I
Yes.
have Darth Vader action figure collector's case. So I bring
Uh-huh.
that down. And like I used to say, we're artists, right? So I would draw out little background scenes, little computer scenes. I would draw my little fake Hoth set. I would draw my little Death Star scene.
Right.
And I had a play set for Star Trek, right? It was the bridge, right?
Okay.
But I turned that into my Star Wars play set.
Okay.
So in
Okay.
the living room, it was there. Everything was there. My grandfather came in from work. He was like, "Oh damn, what's going on over here?"
Uh-huh. Yep.
And then that was one of my fondest memories of just having it.
Yeah.
So I had a big collection, but then I but at the same time, like around 9, I started collecting comics heavy.
Yep. Yep.
So from 9 until my early 40s, I was the long box king. I
Okay.
had
Yeah. Yeah.
at my height, I had like 11 to 12 long boxes, and maybe
Exactly.
a couple of short boxes. And
Uh-huh.
when you first get your job, you start making money. Now you can go back and start buying the comics that you wanted to get. So it wasn't no problem. Like when you had money, you could blow $100, $200 on comics and action figures, right?
Especially
So
if you weren't spending it on a girl. Yeah.
yeah, that was the best part.
Uh-huh.
So I started getting back into collecting action figures, like when action figures start coming back real cool.
Mm-hmm.
And when they start coming back real cool and start being the coolest things, I would kind of like hide them from my ex.
Oh, damn.
And you don't, because I was you didn't want to be judged and she thinking like you were weird.
Oh, yeah. I hear you.
So what I learned to do was like I had to learn how to have confidence.
Mm-hmm.
And my ex was like, "Oh, that's cool." And then on my birthday, she had bought me a Black Panther graphic novel. And then I went to my first comic book convention when I was a grown man, and she knew I went, and she saw that I had bought the first appearance of Jon Stewart,
Okay.
and that was $200. And she was like, "You spent $200 on this?" I said, "Yeah, but you spent $200 on Mac makeup, so leave me alone." And she was like, "All right, you got me, you got me."
You know what the difference is? Like, my son can sell these swords.
Okay.
And trust me, he will get something for them. I don't know I don't know if they reselling makeup, but they definitely, he can definitely sell these swords. But let me, and my comics. I mean, I probably got 40 more plus long boxes, all over. They're stacked into the rafting of my place just because there's so many of them. But I just wanted to show you, because I was, an artist, this is what I mean. So these are all things that I drew, and I have pictures from when I was a kid. I just didn't put them online, so they're not as easy to show you guys. But these are all the pieces I was drawing all the way up through college.
I like that. That's good, man.
They were all pencils, so these were the kind of things I was doing. That's actually Storm.
Okay.
Right there. So I was doing these were, look, if you gave me either toys to play with, a crew of kids to go out and spend all day playing with, or a paper and a pencil, and most especially the paper and pencil, because if I had something to draw, and it didn't even have to be bigger than a notebook sized piece of paper, I would be.
Oh, me too.
I would be gone for hours. And by the time I graduated to like 18 by 32, I guess it was, size paper, you talking about 3 months. I'd be working on a drawing, and if I wasn't doing homework or watching cartoons, I was so into that I didn't even have conversations with people, really. I was just so wrapped into it. I used to go into the mall, and I would go in the food court and just draw. I used to work in the mall, so sometimes I'd be in the food court and I'd just be drawing on a break or whatever, and I'd look up and there'd be 30 to 50 people standing around me just watching.
Yeah.
And
you know what I found out art was for me, man, and it still is? Freedom.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's a great point where it was peace. When I can tell that I had a lot of drama, a lot of negativity in my life, I could not draw, and if I drew, my art would be really rough, ragged, and I could not be in that creative mind space.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a friend that I worked with when I was in the police department. She says, "Well, that's the chick that you need to be able to get away from if you can't draw no more." Amen. So that was something that I learned. And I was like you, like a lot of artists, man. I remember my grandfather would give me $5 for my allowance. $5 back in 70, 80. That was a lot of money.
You could do something with that, yeah.
But here's the crazy cool thing. I would go to a used bookstore, and they would sell old comics for 50 cents a pop.
Okay.
So $5 to a little kid that's around 10 or 11 years old.
Oh, yeah.
That's cool. But then my grandparents and my mom realized he's into this. So my mom would slide me a 10 or 20 here and there.
Mm-hmm.
So I would have 15 or 20.
Oh, man, that was heaven. That was
heaven.
And
it was just that they knew that, okay. And here's another thing. My grandmother loved that. I mean, even before comics, I was an avid reader because my grandmother started me reading when I was like 3 or 4 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So the natural progression to something that you love and you enjoy, the comics, was always something. So she was just happy. As long as the boy got his face in the book, I'm happy.
Yeah.
And my grandfather was the one that pushed me, and he said, and I'll never forget this to this day, and I love him for it. And he says, I see that you draw a lot of superheroes, but why don't you start drawing some black superheroes?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And remember, we used to have Eyes on the Prize every Black History Month,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and they had the paperback test and the baby doll test on there.
Yeah.
And that rang true, and that had me. I said, okay, from now on, all I'm drawing is black superheroes.
Okay.
And my grandfather was looking at my stuff, and he said, "Oh, okay, okay." He said, "I like that. I like that. I like that guy." I said, "I like that guy. He looks like you and me." And I was like, and that made me feel good because it was him dropping a seed into me to say, it's good that you like these people, but why don't you start making some heroes that look like you?
Right.
And that was something that was beautiful. And like you said, when we saw Black Panther, and I even say this, when I saw Black Vulcan on Challenge of the Super Friends, it was cool to see a superhero like that.
Mm-hmm.
And
just real quick, these are AI versions of the pieces you saw. Some of them. I may have had some other pieces that I fed into it. I just wanted to see what AI would do with it. So I'm just awesome, showing you a little bit about that. But I do want to bring in Gitmo into this. Gitmo, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What now you popped up? Have you seen the He-Man film, or what did you want to contribute to?
I want to contribute to the conversation. You know, some of the things that y'all said really touched home at, in the beginning, so far as like Transformers and different things. And like I put in the comments, that's one of the only times my father ever took me to the movies is to see that movie.
Which one?
So, the Transformers, the original Transformers cartoon movie.
Oh yeah, the one that traumatized most kids in America.
Yeah, that is the one.
We were traumatized, man. We were leaving that theater in tears. Do you know?
Every time I came past it on the real, like in the past month, I kept posting it. And they're coming out with the movie for the 40-year anniversary, and I'm still going to see it.
Kids were writing letters to the toy company.
Yep.
I had no idea.
One of my favorite scenes is when Megatron actually kills Ironhide before they
scene.
Yeah, that scene changed. That Ultra Magnus dying and them coming when he turned into Galvatron to the Junkion planet and started murdering them. But they did a whole good out with the old and in with the new with that movie, if you will.
Right. It was a lot. It was a lot. But I gotta say though, watching that movie, I loved Orson Welles' voice for Unicron.
Yes.
Oh man, I was digging that. To this day, I still dig that. That conversation with Megatron when he first pulled him in. I still go listen to that sometimes. But yeah, it was a great time.
Yes, it was. I do agree with y'all very heavily. Like the kids of our generation will never know what it was like when we were growing up. Right. You brought up a lot of good points. Like seriously, like I used to wake up every morning to watch things like the first Spider-Man cartoon that was out. You can either catch it early in the morning or around 2-something in the afternoon. And I live in Nashville, Tennessee, so
okay.
You know how that kind of works with you all, but those were the times. He-Man cartoons, of course. Yep. I don't know about y'all, but I used to wake up and we had cable in my household. I used to watch the USA Express in the morning with the Monchichis. All those older cartoons. Like you said about what was it, Voltron? I used to watch Trenzor Z, if anybody remembers that.
Yes, sir. Classic.
Like the Visionaries, like the GoBots.
Exactly.
I used to watch what is it? I forgot that guy's name. Thundar the Barbarian. Yes.
Thundar the Barbarian. Yep.
Like there were so many cartoons like that. And action figures, like you all just said.
Oh man, I used to watch Black Star.
Yes.
That's right. I used to love Black Star, man.
Yep. all of that. Black, yeah, also Brave Star was another one
Marshall
Brave Star, yep.
with the mechanical horse.
Yes, sir.
and a Native American superhero too.
Yeah, 30-30, I
Yeah.
think was the horse. Yeah, man.
Yes.
Yeah, man.
And the thing about it is, like with us, I used to like this stuff when it wasn't popular. Just to be honest,
Exactly.
I'm an only child. I don't think I had was the TV. One of my first movies was watching. When my mother took me to the store. We first got a VHS forehead VHS. Sorry. To make a long story short, the first two movies I got was Roger Rabbit, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and Batman with Michael Keaton.
Okay.
I remember picking those up from a Kmart back in the day.
Yeah.
And I just want to say that, like, even on the Saturday morning cartoons when they had like Captain N and the Game Master, so many of those things that we don't get back anymore. You know, they changed it up. So, and when it came to GI Joes, I had so many GI Joes. I used to mix and match. Remember back in the day, you can take a little wrench to their back like a screwdriver and take their body and find out they were made of rubber. I used to make all kinds of extra dreadlocks. I used to make all kinds of, like, people who didn't exist. Like, I had sheer clothes for them, basically. I had so many.
Yeah, you breaking up. You're breaking up a little bit.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. But yeah, I just wanted to just touch on those life things.
No, I appreciate it, man. That was the culture, man. I want to bring in Sandman into this. Sandman, can you hear us? Uh-oh.
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. What do you want to contribute to this, man?
Yeah, man, I'm gonna go check out that He-Man movie this weekend, man. I ain't realized it was dropping this early.
Yeah, man. I'm about to get into it in a minute. So if you don't want to hear any spoilers, you might want to, bounce before we do. But I had to kind of set the stage for the context, man, because this is something I think a lot of us grew up in. That you don't really hear talked about as much as I'd like to hear it. Oh shit! Somebody said wheeled warriors. I remember that. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
But go ahead and say something on this.
Yeah, I was raised in Philadelphia in the 1980s. I mean, I was born in the early 1979.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So back in them days, you know what I'm saying, I was raised by my pops, you know what I'm saying, because my we had some issues and stuff like that back in the day, but yeah, man, that He-Man, all of that stuff, you know what I mean? Back in them days, I messed with He-Man, G.I. Joe. I dig G.I. Joe so much and the WWF so much that, you know what I'm saying, when I became an age and I graduated high school, I went and joined the military.
Wow.
Just so I could be like one of them cats, you know what I'm saying?
Wow.
Unfortunately, around the time I left high school was about the time that 2000 popped off and 9/11 popped off, and then it got a little sketchy back then, but it is what it is. All that happened, but yeah, man, G.I. Joe was my joint. I love some WWF. I remember when my uncle first told me that the WWF was fake. Oh man, why you do me like that?
I was traumatized, man. I remember that.
And he gonna do that right after we just got finished watching WrestleMania. And my man Hulk Hogan just had beat the Ultimate Warrior, and then he gonna wait till after it's over to tell me, hey, it's fake, right?
Yeah, man. Man.
That was crazy.
I loved it when Mr. T was in WrestleMania. Not long after, I think Rocky 3. We were loving Mr. T back in the day, man. So Clubber Lang, man. Shit. Clubber Lang was dope.
I got a lot of them. I'm gonna tell you, The thing that killed me about that is when he told Rocky's wife, after I beat him, you can come over here and be with me so you can be with a man that has some horn. I said, wow.
Hey
I'm
woman,
trying to say,
hey woman, why don't you come over here with a real man?
right.
Take you to my place and show you what a real man feels like.
Yeah.
No horn.
Remember,
You know, it's
Mr.
funny.
T had his cartoon in the 80s,
do.
man.
I do.
Oh, he had his own cereal too.
Yeah,
Yep.
he did.
Yep.
He did. A lot of people had, they were really, it was funny to watch how many people were scared of him. But Mr. T looked like my father. He looked like the men that I grew up around. So I didn't find Clubber Lang intimidating. I loved him. I was
Right.
like,
But think about what you just said right there. But think about what you just said right there.
Mhm.
Mr. T looked like my father back in the day.
Yeah.
Back in the day. Mature, masculine, strong men.
Unapologetically so. Yes.
Yeah.
And the thing is, if Mr. T came out today, it would be a whole different thing.
Oh, that's
Because
toxic
my
masculinity.
Yeah, because that just how the way he is, how the way he carried himself. Because remember, he was a bouncer at a club and he was a bodyguard.
The first time I saw him, I want to say is the penitentiary movies.
Yeah, with what's the name?
You know
Leon
what I'm
Kennedy.
talking about. Yeah.
Leon Kennedy.
Oh yeah.
First time I seen Mr. T was my pop used to like that one movie, Taxi.
Oh yeah.
DC Cab.
DC Cab.
Yeah.
Man. I was a Mr. T fan, man. So yeah, man, all of that.
Yeah, Mr. T remind me of my pop too. You know what I'm saying? Minus the haircut and all the jewelry that he used to rock and the tight clothes.
Right.
But yeah, that's how, you know what I'm saying, them cats used to hang back in the day. You know what I'm saying? I think Mr. T from Chicago though.
But if you remember how brothers used to dress in the 70s. I mean, I'm not saying I saw dudes with mohawks, but brothers got wild in the 70s. So it didn't shock me to see Mr. T, though.
Yeah.
It didn't shock me. The way he looked, he made it work. I mean, I wasn't trying to emulate him, but he made it work. I wasn't mad at him, But
and here's the funny thing, like when you hear a lot of these guys on a lot of these toy collecting shows and a lot of memorabilia shows, they go out of the way, white men go out of the way to collect the Mr. T doll and say, "Oh, I love Mr. T." He was an example of black masculinity.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Another thing that he did, what people didn't know, he was an advocate for kids that were runaways, kids that were affected by abuse. Kids that were on drugs, because he had a daughter, a strange daughter he connected to, and his daughter was on drugs. This is like in the 80s. And he got connected back with her and he helped her get off drugs. And when he would do conventions and he would do a lot of stuff, he would do a lot of volunteer work for children.
Yeah, he did. He has a daughter now who's a comedian. I don't know if it's the same daughter, but she tells a story in one of her bits about going to WrestleMania and being in the hotel afterwards, where I guess Roddy Piper accidentally broke Mr. T's ribs or something of that nature. And Hulk Hogan was sniffing cocaine in the hotel room, and she talks about Rowdy came to the room to apologize to Mr. T, and Hulk Hogan hit him in the face. She tells a whole story about
the cocaine culture back in them days was crazy. I remember in the day in Philly, you know what I'm saying, them old heads used to pull out a line of dope and snort it right in broad daylight in front of everybody, like it was nothing, like it was a cigarette.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
But then they cracked down on them drugs, especially that cocaine. Yeah. When they started cooking it, making it hard.
I didn't know that was supposed to be a bad thing until they finally started up with the little commercials with your brain on drugs. But
yeah.
I grew up seeing people sniffing and smoking weed. I was just like, okay, this is what it is, But
that's because white folks was getting addicted
Yeah.
to it.
Was having problems
You
with
know,
it. Yeah.
Richard Pryor said, it's a problem when black people do it,
Right.
but epidemic when white folks start doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. Shout out to Cobra Law.
Right.
I just
You know
watched
who I
that.
love too? I love Stalker and I love Roadblock.
Mhm.
Roadblock rhyming every time when he would say something, man. Come on. I mean, you don't get any more masculine than G.I. Joe. You don't.
I never joined the military, but I did go into bodybuilding, or at least, getting as big as I could early on. Because my pops was a bodybuilder in the 80s when all of this was happening. So I'm absorbing Frank Frazetta paintings, Conan the Barbarian, He-Man. I'm looking at all of this. And of course, all the superheroes were crazy fit. So yeah, man, by the time I was 21, I just got to the point where I was benching over 300. I had a crazy V taper, and I just, I was trying to get as big as I could, until somebody explained to me that you had to pay for gym access when you finished school, and I didn't have that money. So that's where things went left for me. I was like, hey, I got to pay for, I can't, that was rough. But yeah, I wanted that aesthetic, and I had it for a good number of years, man. So, that, and a lot of it was because of this toy culture. But I am going to shift into the movie. So if anybody has a last statement about the 80s they want to get into before I delve in this movie, you can get it off now. And like I said, Sam, man, if you don't want to catch any spoilers, you might want to roll. It's up to you.
Yeah. I just wanted to say this last thing about the 80s, and this is pretty nostalgic for me, especially one of your guests was talking about it. And I'm gonna step off after this because I don't want to get any spoilers. I'm gonna go ahead and check that movie out tomorrow. But as a kid, my father, he was big on tutoring me on math, but
Nice.
we didn't really spend much time on reading. So I struggled catching up with the rest of my classmates when it came to reading. So one of the things that helped me catch up with my reading aptitude was my father used to give me a lunch money, and or not lunch money, but like cash for snacks. And I could go to like the corner store or something, grab me some snacks.
Right.
But instead of going to get some snacks, what I do is I walk to the 7-Eleven. Remember back in the day, there was a 7-Eleven all over the place, and I would buy a comic book like X-Men
Yes,
or
sir.
something like that. With that,
Sure.
and back then you could get like 2 X-Men's for like $1.50 or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Spider-Man. And
Yep.
I would use those comic books to help me learn how to read because it would have the context clues of the actual illustrations on the paperwork along with the reading, and I will constantly use that to help me catch up with my reading skills.
Oh,
So,
man.
yeah, that was nostalgic.
Don't get it twisted, man. I'd probably say that between my mother's, emphasis on education and my reading of comic books, that's where college came from, because reading changes the game when it comes to children and children's learning. Reading and math changed the game 100%. But for me, the reading only came about because I was addicted to comic books.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I can even say between drawing and comic books, it made dealing with new environments different. So like when I went to college, there's that whole thing of I don't know anybody here. I'm here by myself. The same thing happened when I went to graduate school. I went to Temple. I went to Philly. So
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's not too far from where I grew up.
See, so I'm 20 years old. I jump on a plane. I'm in the middle of Philly. I don't have no family, no friends. I don't know anybody. Comic books, I found everywhere I go, I got to find a good comic book shop. You know what I'm saying? And I got to have plenty of paper in my art book and some pencils. That's all I need. And anytime I wasn't studying or in class, especially before I actually found a job out there, I would be either drawing or reading comic books. And there was something calming about reading, issue 38 in California and then reading issue 39 in Philly. There was, you know what I mean? There was like a stability thing it did where it calmed me down and it just made me feel like there was continuity. And I found peace like that. So I could go, once I figured out what makes me tick, I was like, okay, now I can go anywhere. All I need is some comic books and,
You know what?
Right.
You know what? Brother Kofa calls that, man,
Hmm.
your private fuck it.
Hey, man.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
that's what it is. I mean,
So you went
you
to
think about this, like, if we walked into a comic book store, just the smell of that paper, man,
Hell
Mm.
yeah. Oh
just
yeah.
the ability to flip through those long boxes, or
Yep.
you stand there and you look at the comics and you just standing there, or you go over to the t-shirt rack and you look at that, or you look at the toys and you thinking like, do I want to get this or do I want to get that? And then like you next thing you know, you say you were just coming in there, but the next thing you know, it's 4 hours. You're talking to a few dudes, you're talking to the guy that's behind the register. And I'll tell you a story. I went to an old comic book store here in Philly, and the guy said, "Are you on our mailing list in our computer?"
Hmm.
I said, "Man, you want to talk about how far that goes?" And I gave him my name, and he says, "You are still in our registry."
There you go. Yep.
He says, "Wow, you've been in the registry since 1997."
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
And this was the summer of 2025.
Look,
Mhm.
man, I'm gonna say this. If I could do it all over again, raising my son, I would have I wouldn't have allowed him to jump into video games as deeply as he did, as young as he did. I would have really pushed comic books more.
Mhm.
And hell, I mean, even look, I just said this in the chat because Layman was talking about how he got into Calvin and Hobbes. You know, I used to read Calvin and Hobbes, the little comic strip. I used to read The Far Side. And what I came to find is when you read those things, a lot of times they'll do jokes that may go over your head that you got to go
Mhm.
look up as a little kid. And that forces you to think, so between that and comic books, I mean, I was so deep in the comic books, man. They use terms you never hear anywhere else, like you sanctum sanctorum. Where the hell else are you going to hear that term in the 1980s? I had to
Right,
go.
right.
Yeah.
I had to go look it up, and that increased my vocabulary. It made reading far more interesting. I, I didn't know it was doing those things for me. I
That's
just
Mm.
why
enjoyed it.
Stan did that.
Yeah.
He said, I wanted kids' vocabulary to expand. That's why he would say Excelsior at the end. That's why he would
Mm-hmm.
say
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
the uncanny X-Men, the invincible Iron Man,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
Mm.
sensational Spider-Man,
Right.
because
Right.
kids were like, well, what does sensational mean? Besides, we
Mm-hmm.
know what amazing, but what does sensational mean?
Yep. Yep.
Like how you
Mm.
said, the Sanctum Sanctorum.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
get your
Just
get your
just
Webster's dictionary and learn that stuff, right?
Yes,
that's what I
sir.
did.
Yes,
I had
sir.
a stack of comics and I had the Webster's dictionary. I was
Yep.
looking up these words.
Yep.
Mm.
And you know
And
something, and I'm sorry for cutting you off, but and you know something that I noticed in raising my kids, particularly my son, you know what I'm saying, in this new age of the computers and these smart devices is they do not know how to write anymore.
Nah.
Like it takes I was trying to teach I remember when my kid was real young and they trying to teach him how to write. Like it's all chicken scratch. It looks like one of
Yes.
those medical doctors.
Yep.
But back then we used the pencil so much. I used to have a little pencil sharpener inside our house that
Mm-hmm.
was tied down or bolted down to the wooden desk inside the house, and
Nice.
I, you know what I'm saying, use your pencil sharpener, sharpen that pencil, and then go drawing. You go and write something. Yeah, all your assignments you had to write them down on your composition paper and all
Mm-hmm.
that stuff like that. But these kids
Mm-hmm.
nowadays, man, everything with these smart devices, they don't even know how to write no more. And and you went to Temple, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you know about Club McDonald's?
I don't remember. You talking about 1997? So I'm
Oh, okay.
it was still there.
1996, 97. I was only there a year, so there's a
Oh,
lot of
okay.
things
Oh, okay.
I may
Okay.
have seen, but I don't remember.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I remember they used
That
to
was
talk about Club McDonald's back in the day. Yeah,
that was a little further up Broad Street.
I
right off
remember
of
Broad
53
Street.
more.
The comic shop I found was on Broad Street, so I used to go there and pick up my books. But yeah, man, that I didn't realize how much that did. And to your point about storytelling, and I'm gonna get into that with this He-Man movie. You're right. There's a lot of people that do not know how to tell stories, not only in comics but in movies. The storytelling sometimes is just ridiculous. It's just, anyway. But like I said, if you've seen the He-Man movie, stay up. If you're trying to avoid spoilers, this might be the time you need to bounce, because I'm gonna get into it now. So
All right.
Sandman, I appreciate you coming through.
All right, peace out. Thanks for having me.
All right. All right. Holla at you. Gitmo, are you staying up?
Nah, I'm getting up off here. I just appreciate the time. I watch every day. Watch all of y'all every day.
Hey man, thank you.
I just want to say I appreciate it. Y'all don't know how much y'all keep me going on a daily basis. So,
hey man, appreciate hearing it, man. Keep your head up. Let's do it.
Yep. Peace.
All right, man. Peace. Let me see here. All right. So,
well, big homie, I'm about to go see it myself.
Are you? All right.
So I'm about to head out. I got about 45 minutes to get to this movie theater to go see it. Okay.
Cool. Don't listen to nothing I'm about to talk about, because I want to hear from you afterwards. So holler at me later about what you saw.
I will most definitely do that. You know what? I'll give you a call after work. 2 p.m. my time on the East Coast. All right.
What is that? You talking about? Oh shit. Okay. All right. Let me know.
All right. I will. You know what? I'll text you first. Then you text me back to see if you're free. All right.
Cool. All right, man.
brother. Peace
Take
out.
it easy. So shout out to them. Appreciate them coming through, and it's good to know I'm not alone, and appreciating this culture we came out of. As much as it was developed to sell toys and make money, we had a ball, and it actually complemented our learning in many ways, which I can't say is happening today. But we're dealing today with Masters of the Universe. Just came out, I want to say last week. I saw it Wednesday this week. And I was really looking forward to it. The trailers looked really good. It looked like they were taking the genre and the brand seriously. I was really impressed by that. You know how we do, though, when we do film reviews on my channel, I like to at least go through and let's see who we're talking about. So this film was directed by Travis Knight, right? Written by Chris Butler, Aaron Nee, Adam Nee. I'm not familiar with any of those guys, but I came to find out Travis Knight directed Bumblebee. And I will say he did an excellent job with Bumblebee. Bumblebee brought us the original G1 Transformers and the way they should have looked. I'm not saying anything about the Michael Bay films. I enjoyed different things about them. I'd say the further they went, really the crazier they got. By the time everybody was killing all the Transformers, I was really checked out. I like the way that the original G1 cartoon had it, where the Autobots worked with the people pretty well, but Michael Bay had just people trying to kill off all the Transformers, and it didn't work for me. But I will say Travis Knight did a good job with Bumblebee. The original G1, they looked phenomenal. I mean, they looked the way I wished they would look when I was a kid. And I couldn't imagine what a live action Transformer movie would look like, but Bumblebee actually hit the spot. So anyway, he did a good job with that. As far as the actors are concerned, Nicholas Galitzine, I wasn't familiar with a lot of them. I mean, obviously Idris Elba, Jared Leto, I knew about them. But I can't say I was too familiar with too many other people. Marina Baccarin, who plays the sorceress, of course I was familiar with her. Kristen Wiig plays the voice of Roboto. So they did kind of a gender swap for Roboto, which I knew it was going to happen with somebody. I just didn't know who. They did a race swap with Triclops. Shout out to Dolph Lundgren. He walked through for a minute, which was a great little nostalgic moment. I appreciated that. I love when newer series honor the older series in some fashion. I do like that when they pay homage to those that came before. And like I said, the old 87 He-Man movie wasn't as bad as I remembered it. It didn't honor the source material the way I wanted them to. They filmed most of it on Earth. For budget reasons, but there was no Adam transforming into He-Man. It was way different. It really did, and it didn't hold together story-wise a lot of the time. So the producers on this, I like to look through just in case I recognize any names. I don't. Some of you may, but I just like to cover that information when dealing with it. So let me go ahead and pull up some of these pictures here. All right. So this one, as you can, and so far, this was all in the trailer, right? What we do know, let me see. So Girl Talk asked, was there an Orko substitute? Actually, Orko makes an appearance, but not until the end, not until the very end. So you do see him there, but he's not integral to the story at all. You kind of see him much later. The way this one starts, it's Adam as a little boy who is failing his father and man-at-arms in weapons training. He's the smallest one there. Tila is damn near twice his size. I don't know the girl they got to play Tila. Actually, I do need to kind of see. That's not what I meant to do. I need to see who played her because she wasn't white. That's what I do know for sure. She had something in her. There she goes. Okay. Camila Mendez. All right. That explains a lot. That explains a lot. All right. So she's, let me see. All right. They don't seem to give any race information, but yeah. All right. Okay. So she speaks Portuguese. All right. All right. So she's from Brazil. All right. Her parents moved from Brazil to the US and she lived in Brazil, for a year when she was 10. All right. All right. So I knew she was something, they really, for some reason, they have a lot. They be having it out for redhead white folk in these movies. I got to give it to them. I call it, I think I've heard of it where they talk about gingers never get loved and they always get race swapped. Can't lie. It's kind of true. It's kind of true. So yeah. So Tila was in it, but Tila was like twice his size. So he's the littlest person in there. He can't keep up with everyone else. And because he can't, he becomes a little jokester. He's real, in that respect. And this, of course, displeases his father, who's very disappointed in him. So he has a deep-seated kind of insecurity about not being man enough to please his father or masculine enough. And he's probably about 9, I think, at the time this happens. Skeletor attacks and he ends up getting sent to Earth. And his mother doesn't go with him, even though she's from Earth. They hand him the sword and they tell him, keep the sword. This is your way back. They throw him into a portal and the power of the portal is such that it pulls the sword out of his hand. So he lands in the middle of a swamp, which was a little weird because it was at night in the middle of a swamp and, really out there in the water. And I didn't even see him resurface. He was just there in underwater, and I was like, this is a little dark, and then you see him years later as a young adult where you have to assume he was raised in the system, and he's very fixated on, the narrative about Eternia and going home, just like you saw in the trailer. Everybody thinks he's crazy and so on and so forth. Very early on in the film, they let you know that this movie is not really going to prioritize the source material. What it's going to prioritize is this whole question of gender, this whole question of masculinity. And this is unfortunately what the film spends a great deal of time about, challenging the idea of traditional toxic masculinity. And it's amazing to me how much energy they expend doing this. And it lets you know when they do that, who they're catering to, And strangely enough, they're catering to a population with this film that isn't really interested in the source material, which makes no sense whatsoever. There were jokes that they made. I'm going to hop around a little bit because, like I said, I'm not going to do a straight through narrative like I usually do. I'm just going to, talk about specific elements of it. But there was a point where you find out that all the names of the characters, they don't tell you the actual names of any of the characters outside of Tila and Duncan, Man-at-Arms. Everybody else, from Mechanic to, Ram Man to He-Man himself, these were all names that Adam gave everybody as a 10-year-old. In trying to remember all the characters. So when he tells everybody the names he came up with, they all kind of dismiss him, laugh at him, look at him strange, but they don't actually tell you what their names are. So when he finally talks about, at the end of the film, He-Man as the name that he took, they laugh at him. And there was, it was supposed to be a funny moment because they were like, oh, that's macho, that's this and that. There's one middle-aged woman in the movie theater laughing. at the fact that this name is so stupid and macho. And that was, to me, if you could take the whole film and put it in one moment to, kind of give you a sense of what the problem was, that was it for me. You spent all of this money, all this time getting people to this theater to make jokes targeting the middle-aged women that would find this ridiculous. There's only, I'd say the theater was about 70% full. I caught a 7:00 showing. Nobody laughed except this one middle-aged woman about the fact that this name was stupid and macho. And it was the product of a 10-year-old's imagination. This is what I was saying earlier. If you're going to do something, I don't mind an occasional tongue-in-cheek at whatever, especially if it's a particular brand from like the 80s or something of that nature. But it was too much. Too much of the film was framed around making fun of the genre. And they pulled in different clips from YouTube, different memes that had been popular in the last 10, 15 years or whatever it is. And they kind of made reference jokes about it. And if you didn't remember those things, you just didn't get it. Yeah, Fisto was, again, one of the names he came up with at 10 years old. So, to me, again, if you don't have confidence in the brand that you're making a film on, you end up kind of making a joke of it and making a joke of the people that really do love it. And when it comes to this kind of stuff, to me, that's not the way to go. The way to go is to honor the material so that you honor the people that love it and hopefully build it from there. Now, they have plans. They show you in the credits that they're planning to do a sequel, but it all depends on how well these films do. And I would tell Travis directly, this is not the way to go. Making fun of He-Man is not the way to go, because you got to figure this is only the second live action movie He-Man fans ever got. The first one refused to honor the core material, the canon material, right? And they just willy-nilly kind of, reconfigured it to suit their own sensibilities, whether it was their budget or whether it was whatever the hell the director or the writer felt like doing in the moment. We get to this second one and we get a chance to finally see something being taken seriously. They're putting the money behind it. You see the special effects. Eternia was gorgeous. Eternia was gorgeous. Castle Grayskull looked beautiful. The characters looked well. I would say He-Man was not as muscular as I would have hoped, but the characters all looked well. So, to twist it up by, making this whole film a critique of toxic masculinity is like serving a fine meal, and then sprinkling it with shit. Unfortunately, that's kind of what it was. It was so beautifully put together visually. And then they would sprinkle in this contemporary critique of toxic masculinity that really didn't have a place. And they doubled down on it in many ways very, very early on. By the time you catch up with Adam as an adult, he works in an HR department, right? Now, HR department, as we would talk about over here, is one of the main places where feminization has taken root. It has become the measure for feminizing different environments. And Adam is an agent in that process. Right, he has a black woman boss. I want to say it's the same one that comes out of the Saturday Night Live series. At least I never followed her enough to know, but I'm pretty sure it is. But she's chastising him about looking up because he's trying to find the sword that he lost. So finally somebody sends him a text saying that they found the sword. He's trying to get hold of it. So he spends so much time fixated on this. That of course this is considered threatening behavior, hypermasculine behavior, even though he's anything but. He's kind of bigger, but they have him in oversized clothes where it's supposed to suggest that he's not really in shape. But it's a bit of a problem because he's into this HR culture as well, and it's very much critical of anything that presents itself as masculine, right? And let me see, I kept some notes in here from the film. What you see is pretty traditional in many respects. Men have to be bumbling idiots. They have to be hyper masculine, idiotic, unintelligent, even to the point where Man-at-Arms is a buffoon, played by Idris Elba. He's a drunkard. He's lost his way. He when Skeletor attacks, he loses a fight against Trapjaw, loses all his security because the king and queen are taken. The prince is sent off to another world. He's effectively failed. And so he loses all his confidence. He's a bumbling, idiotic version of himself. And you have never seen Man-at-Arms presented that way. The Man-at-Arms that we're familiar with from childhood onward. And I've watched every He-Man series except the one where he was in space. I didn't want to see that bullshit. I still refuse to watch it. But I've watched the original. I watched I think it was the 2002 version, which I think did a very good job, cartoon-wise. As a matter of fact, if you look at the 2002 version as a prequel to the original He-Man, it makes a lot more sense. They did excellent work on those two series. They're supposed to do another He-Man animated series, I want to say on YouTube soon. I guess it's supposed to be in support of this film, but I haven't heard anything about it dropping yet. But anyway, that aside, there's a lot of lore there that's built up, and in no context have you seen Man-at-Arms just give up, become a drunkard and a joke of himself. And that's what they do here. Shout out to the Roger Report. What's good, man? He said, I saw it last night. That film is definitely not made by a fan. Yep. Said, I'm sure they will do a sequel because their anti-man message will be even stronger in the implied sequel. Salute, Doc. Salute to you as well. And I agree. The adventures, Growth Talk, the adventures of He-Man, I think this was like in the 80s, early 90s. I can't remember when. It was horrible. It was horrible. I saw the animation. I didn't even want to bother. I think I may have watched one episode just to confirm it was as much garbage as I thought it was. It did not do well, and they had trouble figuring out why. But they just removed everything everybody loved about He-Man, threw him in space, and it was stupid. But short of that, I'm a connoisseur of all things He-Man. So this was something I looked forward to, just to be smacked in the face with this. So the men are presented as idiotic. The women are presented as organized, intelligent, capable. In many ways, they spend a lot of time mommying the male characters, He-Man included. Teela, and they did this with the Netflix series, animated series. Now, there are a couple of different He-Mans on Netflix. There's 2 animated series. And so there's one that's clearly for younger children. It was okay, not really my thing. The Netflix series that's associated with, what's his name? Kevin. Y'all will remember his name in the comment section. The animation was phenomenal. Animation was just pure genius. The storytelling, however, was garbage, because what they did is they replaced He-Man with Teela for the majority of it, and they tried to make it a more gynofocal kind of approach. Kevin Smith, thank you, Davinian. I'm sorry. Thank you for that. Yeah, it's the Kevin Smith He-Man animated movie. There's 2 series, I guess, not movie. It's 2 series back to back. He baited and switched everybody, right? It was supposed to be about He-Man. It was more about Teela and how frustrated she was that nobody told her the secret of Adam being He-Man at a point where Adam dies. And so you get most of the series where she's throwing a tantrum. She quits working for the king and queen, and she gets a veiled female gay best friend, lesbian friend or whatever. It's absolute garbage, but I can say the animation is incredibly beautiful. It was the animation you wished you could have saw after the original He-Man series as a kid. It was absolutely gorgeous. The fight scenes were great. But there was that. Now here's something that I want to add to this discussion that nobody talks about. When you watch the original He-Man series in the 80s, He-Man is in many ways kind of like Shazam. If you watch Shazam, he's supposed to have the wisdom of Solomon. Whenever Adam would change into He-Man, there would even be a slight echo behind his voice whenever he spoke. And whenever a new problem would present itself, he would figure out a solution. He was a thinker, he was intelligent, and he had a wisdom to him that Adam didn't have. What I noticed in many of the series that would take place, especially when you get to the Kevin Smith Netflix series and this movie, He-Man has no wisdom. He has no greater intelligence. He's just muscled up. And I think that's a huge loss. But if you go back and watch those original He-Man shows, he is a different person when he becomes He-Man, not just physically, even in terms of capability. He's able to give advice. He gives people wisdom. Whenever there's a new problem, he strategizes a solution. You know what I mean? The way they wrote him back then was that it didn't just transform his body. It transformed more than that. What I'm saying to you is, in many of these shows where they're trying to downplay the best qualities of masculinity, often what they end up doing is dismissing those qualities of masculinity that speak to, how would you put it, men having capabilities beyond just dominance and physicality. Intelligence, wisdom, all of that is kind of dismissed. You do get a moment where Man at Arms gives him some life advice, but he's such a bumbling idiot. His daughter pretty much has to mommy him the entire time. And this is something that's really hard to watch for these characters. But the removal of He-Man's wisdom, just like you saw in the Shazam movies, because they did the same thing. He doesn't possess the wisdom of Solomon when you watch the Shazam movie. He's just a big kid. He's just a kid in a big man's body doing dumb shit the way a 10-year-old would be. But that's not actually how either character was written. Yes, they are children that transform into men, but those men had wisdom. They had godlike wisdom that they used in accompanying their powers. Right. And this is what that did for kids who were reading these series, was to highlight to you the importance of intelligence and wisdom alongside physical power. Well, they removed all of that because what they're doing in these films is they're critiquing men. So you don't even see men with wisdom. For the most part, what you see is big children that need to be mommied, and they need to be mommied by all the women around them. So much so, they had a woman character. Now, there are a lot of female characters you can find in the He-Man universe. They made up a woman character that has not, and to my knowledge, been a part of any of the He-Man series we're talking about. And if she was, it couldn't have been a big part because I didn't remember anything about her. She's in it. She's on Eternia. She used to bully Adam when he was a little boy. And now she's just there fighting and beating up people as well as all the other masters of the universe. She doesn't have any special weapons, no special skill set. She's just a woman. And she's beating everybody up in these wars with Skeletor and his soldiers, just like all the other masters. And I'm just like, why the fuck is she here? Who is she? They didn't pick somebody out of the canon, a female character out of the canon. Yes, you had Teela and you had Evil Lynn, but they didn't pick that. They just gave you this character. She wasn't dressed especially different. She was just a regular chick, used to bully Adam, and goes around, fighting and beating up everybody as well as anybody else. And there's no rationale as to why. Right. So on Earth, you have these women who are in positions of authority, and they're kind of mommying Adam at certain points. And then you get to Eternia, and it's really the same goddamn thing. It's really the same thing. Let me see. Growth Talk says, of course, the race swap of Man at Arms is a drunken black man. Yeah, but he's not only a drunkard, he's a buffoon, and he's a broken man. Right. He's so fixated, even in the beginning when he's training Adam and the other kids for warfare, he's so fixated on posing, on winning. None of this is a reflection of Duncan. If you remember Duncan from the original cartoon, Duncan was a middle-aged man. He was a weapons inventor. He was the chief of security, the man at arms for the king and queen. He was a wise man. He had wisdom, Whenever he would deal with Adam, Adam was more like a little boy. When he dealt with He-Man, they were more on even par as far as intellect and natural wisdom. John says, this is part of Hollywood's deconstruction of longstanding franchises. To make men look idiotic, they have lost hundreds of millions on this strategy, but still do it. Absolutely. Absolutely. They are still doing it. As a matter of fact, you brought in something that I literally wrote in my notes. I remember when I watched the last Star Wars sequel trilogy. And one of the things I remember thinking is they really have a hard time, even with a character like Yoda, because the notion of an intelligent, masculine being. Now, Yoda's never been the most masculine character in the world, but Yoda's still male, right? We've seen females of his species, so we know he's male. Where the West is right now, they have a serious insecurity about presenting capable, strong leader men as wise, in charge, and able to help people with their problems. They have a real problem displaying that. So what you see them doing is they got to play them down. They got to make them a joke. They got to make them idiots and imbeciles. You don't see it quite like that with Yoda, but he's definitely played down. The same thing kind of happens here with not only Man at Arms, but with He-Man himself. There's definitely a bumbling idiot narrative that's consistent in this. The women are often managed by, the men are managed by women, even Skeletor to a certain extent. Evil Lynn kind of mommies him at different points. But he's more like an errant child. at times that she has to kind of tolerate, even though she works for him. He's definitely in charge, but she ends up having to clean up his rough edges and give him some direction because he's basically, in their minds, a big child. 30 cases. They even gender swap Roboto. Yeah. Kristen Wiig is the white woman that was on Saturday Night Live. She plays the voice. They tried to give a little feminist moment using Roboto, a robot who, was a war machine that was turned into like a cleaning unit. So when you first see Roboto, Robato's cleaning the cell. And always with the snarky remarks, making fun of Man-at-Arms. He's an idiot. He's an imbecile, And then when Adam asks her to join this fight, because Roboto was a war machine, Roboto decides to join, but there's this point where Roboto says, but I'll join as long as I never have to clean anything again. So they kind of take this robot, they gender swap it and then give it a feminist moment that comes out of the 1960s that has no bearing on the story and no reason to be there. Right. But they kind of force in this kind of feminist moment with a robot and a female voice actress that has nothing to do with anything. But again, if you're marketing to the crowd that grew up on He-Man or even the male kids you want to enjoy He-Man, why would you throw in a reference from the 1960s feminist movement? Who are you actually targeting with this film? So there was a little of that going on. Let's see. I wrote this in the theater. They low key market to women in this film, not because. Let me see. Oh, I was saying not because they seem to know what they're doing, but because they don't know how to market to men. And this is what I truly believe at this point. Even though it's become clear that audiences do not want this misandrous narrative, I think they've reached a point where they don't know how to make these kind of movies without it anymore. I mean, you have to have very special circumstances to see that avoided. I mean, if you go watch The Punisher, One Last Kill, John Bernthal damn near had to take control of the whole Punisher narrative just so it wasn't filled with these kind of feminist narratives. I don't think storytellers, whether you're talking about the generation of kids that they're bringing in to tell these stories, who've grown up on a heavy dose of gynofocal, feminism, I don't think they know how to write masculine men anymore. Anytime you saw something that was too masculine, it had to be tamped down with a female dismissal of sorts, or a joking or a bumbling idiot kind of thing to kind of take the edge off of it. And then there was always this kind of return to a feminist narrative where at the end of the day, the narrative was these men are a little crazy and it really takes women to come in and put things in order. There's even a homoerotic moment where Skeletor is kind of describing He-Man as being muscular and tan with this big shiny thing, and it was just like, what the fuck is this coming from? Like there was it. I said earlier, Orko's in the end. Growth Talk. Skeletor and Evelyn. Now here's the thing about Evelyn. Evelyn is kind of like Harley Quinn. And they really play it up in this movie. I will give them that. Evelyn is addicted to the bad boys. She's supposed to represent the women that love bad boys, even to their own detriment, right? Now, Harley Quinn used to be written that way in the 1990s. When women got hold of Harley Quinn, they had to change her because the idea that she was a participant in her own abuse at the hands of the Joker was too embarrassing to women. So you're not supposed to show women who like dysfunction, who like to be controlled, who like the bad boys that beat on them. You can't have that. You can't have that narrative. You can't show women being in the wrong in some fashion. It's considered a problem, right? So what you saw them do over the years is Harley Quinn became a new character. She became this independent feminist icon that beats up and shoots at the Joker whenever she gets a chance because how dare he, and she's never going back to that. That wasn't how she was initially written. She was initially written as somebody that was codependent to such a degree where he would almost kill her at different points, and she still couldn't see it. Other people would try to tell her, the Joker is crazy. He doesn't love you. He's trying to kill you, and she'd make excuses. That was where Harley Quinn came from. Well, in the same way, Evelyn was like that in this movie. She was addicted to his mistreatment. He would mistreat her. He would, and she would take it. He damn near killed her a couple of times, and she didn't go anywhere. She was his most loyal servant. And you could tell she'd get excited at different points when he talked to her in a most disrespectful way. So she kind of represented, women who are addicted to this. But the way feminists kind of play that up is she's primed to grow out of this when she becomes her full female self. She will grow past this little petulant boy and this bad boy addiction and grow past it. And they grow past it in a couple ways. They either walk off by themselves or with other women in some kind of collective to find their peace. But that's the narrative. Now, that doesn't happen in this film, but don't be surprised if it happens in another, because it actually happened in the Netflix Kevin Smith He-Man series, where Evelyn is addicted to Skeletor's abuse. But of course, she moves beyond it by the time you get to the follow-up series Revolution, I think it is, Masters of the Universe Revolution, where she moves past it, Skeletor, and he, she talks about him like he's a little kid. This is how women have to do it. These are displays of female dominance that we see over and over again. And it's been happening in the Netflix series, and it definitely happens in this film constantly. These little digs at men and masculinity. There's even a whole set where kind of like, oh goodness, if you go to the Harry Potter series and you talk about Harry Potter and Voldemort. Remember in that series, there's a point where he and Voldemort get into this mental exchange, in the mental scape where, they're going through, Voldemort is going through Harry's mind. And you have that moment with Skeletor and He-Man in this movie. Skeletor goes into He-Man's mind and he sees Adam, and he takes Adam back to Earth in this mental scape. And he just kind of shows up at different points to beat up on him and abuse him and make fun of him. And there are these key moments where they have these jokes. There's a moment where they're in the gym and they're talking about bro culture and hyper masculinity in the gym. It's ridiculous. 30K asks, says both were separated, but I wonder how She-Ra's rites of passage will be in the movie. You see her in the credits. You see her in the credits. I will say it's a beautiful sword. They did an excellent design on it. It looks similar to He-Man's, but it's different. She's there. And interestingly enough, she's already fully powered. So maybe they'll go back and show us her journey. I'm sure they'll have to if they do a follow-up movie and show us what she went through to get there. But what we see at the end of the film is she's already She-Ra, whereas Adam has to go through this whole process. And I will say, now that it comes to mind, the sorceress explains to Adam at a particular point that even though there have been a line of He-Mans, or not He-Mans, but characters who were considered the champion, there have been other champions. And this has been something that's been popularized since the 2002 He-Man series. The issue for her, though, is she gives him the power in a unique way that no other champion has had it before. And she gives him the power. So it's not the sword, even though the sword plays a role. In this particular movie, the sword is not the source of the power. She gives the power to Adam himself. But here's the twist. She gives it to him because of his, what we might call his feminine characteristics. And I didn't get a chance to write them down, but paraphrasing, it was like his softness, his love for others, like they, and there's nothing wrong with that in and of itself. But what they did was they sidestep any qualities we would associate with masculinity, and they made it a point to fixate on qualities that are mostly described as feminine. Right. So they successfully feminized He-Man in the sense that, sorry about that, in the sense that the qualities that made him different from any other champion and put the power inside him instead of in the sword was because he was a masculine figure who had feminine characteristics. The sorceress chose him because of those feminine characteristics. So again, you get these digs on a meta level at times against masculinity. It's happening overtly and in your face. It's happening in the humor. It's even happening on a meta level. There's constant digs at masculinity. And they decided that He-Man was the perfect project to do it in because it's so unapologetically masculine, or at least it was. Ranger 1 says, I have AMC Stubbs A-list. Only 10 folks in the theater today and yesterday. Voltron is going to streaming. We need a Thundar and Mask movie with Michael B. Jordan and Pierce Brosnan. I'm not mad about that, but I'm becoming very protective about who should be directing and making these films and who the fuck should not be in the writing room at all. Because this agenda to keep popularizing, these feminist critiques of masculine projects, or projects that were, historically or traditionally targeted at males, because they made it such where the fact that it was targeted to males at all was inherently toxic. So there's nothing wrong with projects that and brands that were targeted at girls, and there's no push for boys to enter into those spaces. But when it comes to male spaces, it's considered inherently toxic because they targeted males, and they have to not only make room for women, they have to make women the primary target of male projects and properties. That's what's been going on lately. They have to completely shift the target audience to appease women who've never expressed interest at all. I mean, look, how many women went to go see Barbie? How well did it do? How many women have you heard talking about going to see He-Man? Virtually none. There's no huge market of women. I'm not saying there aren't women that won't go see it, or there aren't women that didn't have the He-Man toys, but more girls than not had She-Ra toys than they did He-Man. And prior to She-Ra, it was cool, but you didn't see a whole lot of girls going crazy over He-Man like that. They didn't start going crazy over the project until She-Ra came into it and they fixated on She-Ra. Right? You had a pretty stark gender split. Now, I saw there were some male kids that got into She-Ra. There were some girls that liked He-Man, but for the most part, it was pretty much split down the middle. But now you have a logic where these companies are so trying to cater themselves to women's interests, even on projects that women never even asked for. No women asked for He-Man. Why is a 40-year-old woman the only one laughing at the jokes happening in the goddamn movie? Because she was the one they were targeting, and it made no sense why. Girl Talk says, shameless admission, Evelyn and the Baroness from G.I. Joe gave a young Kofa a thing for dark-haired goth chicks. Well, don't forget, Evelyn had white hair, but I get your point. I agree with you. All right, so let me see what is, yeah, a lot of the movie was real jokey. I don't mind a couple of jokes here and there. I get it. But the whole movie should not be a farce. It really shouldn't be a farce. And I think they kind of went in. You could tell they not only were marketing to, female sensibilities, they were marketing to little kids, and they were trying to use a little bit of that humor, but it didn't mix well for this property, for this brand. I wrote in the theater that Tila, mommy's Duncan, hurt. Now, mind you, if you don't know, Tila is his daughter. So, Man-at-Arms is played by Idris Elba. This is a race swap. So, you got a black Man-at-Arms. You have a racially ambiguous Tila, and she spends the whole time mommying him, like he's a grown child. Let me see. So John says, again, they are losing money hand over fist, but somehow they are still getting funding from somewhere to try and put through their male subjugation social agenda. Exactly who is funding this? I'm glad you said that, because let me see. I was looking at something the other day that I had, and I think it's appropriate that I show it now. I don't know if this is still happening, but we know these kind of things were funding some of these films for a few years. Let me see. I'm almost there. Kind of had it filed away, and I really literally just tripped on it last night and found it by accident. I'm trying to see where it is. Bear with me a moment. Damn it. Really, I just got through looking at it yesterday, and now it's okay. How has it disappeared? It was just here. Anyway, I'll try to keep talking about it while I look for these. So, the entire film stayed at war with any kind of sense of masculinity. The men have to be unsure. The women always needed to give them direction. It got to the point where the men seemed incapable of good judgment. And sometimes that happened with Skeletor as well as the He-Man crew. Why is it not coming up? Let me see. He-Man is far more concerned with listening and talking. And this becomes something that Duncan, kind of leans into to be a better resource for him. And because the entire film, early on, Duncan is very much, a warrior. Everything is about winning and fighting, which is not how Duncan was written. yes, he was man at arms, but he wasn't written like that as just this kind of toxic, masculine, macho, kind of character. All right, so I found them. Let me share these real quick. Now, these I did not create. Okay, hold on. All right, let me do this here. Now, these are, oh, great. Seems like everything is going weird over here. Some of my stuff is not working, and I'm not sure why. Where is it? There we go. All right. So I got two forums. Both of these came from Marcus years ago. He came on my show and talked a little bit about this. Those of you watching the show on the portrait, I apologize. I don't know how to make it smaller to fit, but this is from SAG-AFTRA, right? And it talks about diversity in casting, right? And it says, the diversity in casting incentive applies to the moderate low budget project agreement and the low budget theatrical agreement only. Total production cost maximum may be increased to the following amounts: low budget project agreement, $700,000 to $950,000. Theatrical agreement, $2 million to $3 million. It says if the producer has demonstrated that it qualifies for diversity in casting by meeting the following criteria prior to the start of principal photography: minimum of 50% of total speaking roles and 50% of total days of employment are cast with performers who are members of the following four protected groups: women, senior performers over 60, performers with disabilities, people of color, and a minimum of 20% of the total days of employment is cast with performers who are people of color, right? So that's one. So we're talking about the incentives that frame why these films are being made this way. This is the other. And again, shout out to Marcus for providing this information a few years ago, right? So more productive incentives. The revised legislation expanded the program by applying the tax incentive to the first 15 million of all films and television productions in the United States. First $15 million of all, not just productions whose total costs do not exceed a $15 million cap, as in the original legislation. If the costs are incurred in economically depressed areas in the United States, the incentive can be applied to the first 20 million. But I think the point Marcus was making by providing these documents is he was showing how there are backdoor incentives that financed movies that flopped even before they started principal photography, even before the films came out. Studios were making money by meeting diversity quotas that were able to finance them, right? And in so doing, they could justify these flops because they were making money on the front end. But here's the downside to that. As it relates to Black men who have fought for generations to be present in some of these narratives, whether you're talking about comic books, whether you're talking about superhero genres, Black men, as these were targeted to boys, Black men fought tooth and nail to be a part of these series. Now, here's the thing. Girls, across race and Black women themselves fought to be in other properties. There's a long-standing war between Black women and Barbie before they actually had Black Barbies. And there's no disrespect for that. I salute it. Cool. The boys fought to be in the genres that they read every day, and there were independently made genres as well. Don't get it twisted. Black people were making their own, Black men especially were making their own comic books. It was what it was. So if you preferred the independent route, Black men were doing that. If you preferred to have the superheroes with Black characters in those stories, that were for larger tent projects like with Marvel and DC, you had a long history of Black characters. And the important thing about those Black characters is that Black men were artists and writers and were actively fighting on the ground to make sure those characters represented the Black community in some form or fashion. So at every front, you've had Black people in these industries fighting for space. But at a certain point, white women got to be the arbiters of what was considered diverse, and their rationale for what would be considered ideally diverse, especially as we've seen in these films, tended to be critiques of masculinity, the highlighting of, say, LGBT characters and values at the expense of what we would consider straight values. And then on top of all of that, the kind of hyper-feminization of these projects, right? And this is where it kind of ended up going. So even though you have all these Black men, and I felt like this, especially I wrote about this extensively in some of these blogs where the first Black Panther movie came out. And this was nothing that I've been waiting to see for 40 years in the Black Panther. They gave all his best characteristics to his sister, which would be like giving Lois Lane his super strength and his flight. We just get to see Superman running around driving a truck or something. That's essentially what we got with the Black Panther. His brilliance. He's one of the top 10 intellects on the planet. They give it to his sister. But when you look at what the Panther did in comic books, is he really inspired Black boys not only to read in terms of comic books, but to go into science, because that was one of the things. He was not only brilliant, he was a scientist. He was an inventor. So he was doing Tony Stark, Reed Richards level stuff to the point where they would ask for his consult. That's how brilliant he was. But you took that away and you gave it to girls who never even asked for it. They were fighting to get into Barbie. It would be the equivalent of Barbie turning around and making a black male Ken doll and really, going into work to try and grapple with the best elements of masculinity to a group of young boys that never asked for that shit. That's essentially what they've been doing. They've been turning these projects over to girls and women in a way that these women didn't even ask for. And when it tanks, they find out that even the films that do horribly, men are still the primary ones that go see it, like Captain Marvel. Men are the ones that still go see it, even when it's gynofocal, even when it's disrespectful and misandrist, it's still men that are going to see it. When the women show up for these Marvel projects or any of these superhero projects that have traditionally been targeted toward boys, they show up when men show up in higher numbers. That's when they show up. But what Barbie should have taught them is if you just do projects based on what women actually want, you can make quite a bit of money. You don't have to keep taking over male brands and projects. You just give the women what they want and you'll make more money. But give the men what they want, and guess what'll happen? But they refuse to acknowledge these kind of things. Shout out to Ghetto User. He says, I agree with you, Doc, but the problem I have is the heroine never gets beat up. Yes. And the women never die. Yes. The men get slaughtered, yet the women escape. Absolutely. If you go watch the first Wonder Woman movie a few years ago, you have a female villain and you have a male villain, and you have Wonder Woman and you have Steve Trevor, right? 2 heroes, 2 villains. By the end of it, the female villain literally just walks away. Wonder Woman looks at her. She done killed people throughout the whole goddamn movie. Wonder Woman looks at her and she walks away. And the rest of the time they spend fighting the male deity that they have to fight. But the woman, there's no repercussions for women. Wonder Woman doesn't really get hurt. The woman villain walks away. But these are the kind of narratives that we keep seeing. So I agree with you completely, Ghetto User. Dr. Vince Johnson says there is an agenda. It's funded by the same people, Fund Target, SPLC, etc. Right? They are not concerned about the amount it costs. It's about an agenda, feminization of men. Absolutely. Absolutely. Growth Talk adds in the best cartoon or live action film I've seen, at least from my Xenio point of view. It's still the first TMNT movie and a few Batman films. You see moments of it here and there that give you hope. Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight series, I didn't see a whole lot of feminization in that, but apparently Christopher Nolan's latest Odyssey film seems to be grappling with a lot of that. I don't know if I'm going to see it at all. I have no real interest in doing so, but this feminization agenda we keep seeing over and over again, and it doesn't seem to be going anywhere. I will say it's been lightening up a bit since Trump, as I think Trump has been actively pushing back against it on certain levels. But apparently Hollywood is still doubling down on this to the point where, the Prince of Eternia works in an HR office talking about toxic masculinity. And even as He-Man, he tries to bring in HR training seminars to help him as He-Man. There's a point, and you see a bit of this in the trailer, where he's in a prison, I want to say in Snake Mountain, with a whole bunch of other people. And instead of giving a rallying speech or, strategizing their escape in a militaristic fashion, maybe bringing in man-at-arms to help with that, he decides to hold an HR seminar in the prison. I bullshit you not. He is holding an HR seminar in the prison to motivate people to fight. It makes no sense. It has no connection to anything that's existed in the canon. It really didn't need to happen, but he has to hold an HR seminar at that juncture, which makes no sense at all. Let me see. Let's see. They have a brief conversation about manhood. Duncan and He-Man do, and just doing all you can. There were a couple of lines that were cool, but the rest of it was, then it quickly shifted back into Man-at-Arms being a drunkard who wants to lay around and do nothing because he's lost hope. It's kind of like what they did with Luke Skywalker in the last sequel trilogy. The Luke you grew up with, that you wanted to see, this master Jedi that we were all waiting to see, is a drunkard who's given up and lost hope because they can't conceive of a powerful male character who's deeply invested, wise, and capable, who has to give advice and direction to female characters. We couldn't have that. He had to be effectively a little boy that needed to be cajoled into action, because that suits the narrative, right? Because that means he needs to be mommied. Right? Women have a purpose. They need to keep these little boys on track, even when the boys are over 50. But I'll tell you this, whether I collect toys, swords, watch cartoons or not, that has nothing to do with whether or not I'm a little boy or a grown-ass man. Because before I collect any swords, before I buy a single Transformer, I make sure my bills are paid, my son is taken care of, my responsibilities are met. See, that's the difference between a boy and a man. It's not the outward presentation of whether or not I bought a new sword. It's whether or not I know how to prioritize what's important when it comes to taking care of mine, and then treating myself to something that I may enjoy. And just because I enjoy these things doesn't make me a child. It's how I handle my responsibility that determines my manhood. And you have plenty of grown ass men that handle their fucking business every day that may be into Transformers or may be into sci-fi movies, that may be into all of that. But this superficial dismissal of grown men as boys because they appreciate play culture from the 80s is a dismissal that completely sidesteps what manhood is all about. But you can't have a critical discussion about manhood, particularly on the left, because it has to be dominated by feminist sensibilities. We have to end the discussion with the need for men to be the need for men to follow women, because women are the only ones that know where we need to go. We need to be mommied into how to act properly and be good little boys. And the film is a prescription for all of that, right? So you have this He-Man that wants to sit around and talk about his feelings. You have him conducting HR seminars in prisons. I will say, even on a sci-fi level, he was a lot weaker than he should be. You even see this in the trailer. He lifts, a ship for Tila at one point, and he talks about how heavy it is, but He-Man has literally lifted mountains. So how a ship is too heavy, I have no way of knowing. It was a weird jokey point where he gets into a fight with Trapjaw right after he turns into He-Man for the first time, and he punches Trapjaw and it hurts his hand, and he goes, ah. And I'm like, what kind of He-Man is this? As I said, he possesses no greater wisdom or discernment when he turns into He-Man. He's still Adam. He's just a lot more powerful. So he's a little boy. He's like a little boy with a gun. He's just really excited that he has this strength, but it's still jokey. It's still, he got his ass whooped in the movie far more than I have ever seen He-Man get his ass whooped. It was really strange. Let me see here. Let's see. There is a point where, much like Black Panther, in the first Black Panther movie, you see him in love with Nakia, right? But Nakia friend zones him. Now, you tell me how that works. If you know anything about T'Challa, the king of Wakanda, Black Panther, he's getting friend zoned by this girl he's been in love with that really could take him or leave him. She's indifferent about him the entire time. Later on, they try and suggest she might have felt something because by the second film, she's had his child. But when you actually see them on screen together the entire time, she barely pays any attention to him. He's an afterthought in his own goddamn movie, right? So not only do they give his superpowers to his sister, he has no capacity to attract the woman he's attracted to. Because again, they can't have that image of a dominant male who actually is pursued by women. We can't have that narrative. The narrative has to be that men have to chase along women like puppies. And maybe one day she'll appease you by giving you some or giving you some attention. That's the narrative they want to go with, as if women not only are attracted to men, but will chase after men. See, we can't have that. Just like we can't see dysfunctional women like Harley Quinn or Evelyn that are actually dysfunctional. We can't have that, and we can't have women that are attracted to men and pursue them. So I bring that up because there's a conversation that He-Man has with Teela where he tries to kiss her, and she basically goes, no, we're just friends. So He-Man just got friend zoned by Teela. This is the same Teela in the cartoons who has been in love with He-Man from the beginning. And now she tolerates him. She tolerates him. It makes no sense whatsoever. You know, he's kind of cucked in his own movie in a way. So she friend zoned He-Man, not Adam, He-Man. It would be one thing if she friend zoned Adam. And the whole other thing is everybody knows about his transformation. He does it in front of everybody. And they make a joke about him trying to keep it a secret at the end whenever he needs to change. But they reveal it from the beginning, which made no sense to me. Part of the reason he didn't reveal that was so they wouldn't go attack family and friends on his behalf. But in this movie, they didn't care about that. He changes in front of everybody so everybody knows. And despite that, Teela still friend zones He-Man, not Adam, which made no sense. Let me see. Of course, King Randor ends up dying, but he ends up dying at He-Man's hand accidentally. There's a point where He-Man, kind of shatters the roof in Snake Mountain. It falls on his father, and his father dies. And he does have a brief conversation with him where he says he was waiting for his father to basically love him. And his father points something out to him. He says, he says, when you were a kid and you weren't capable the way you thought I wanted you to be, it's just that the need was so great. I needed you to be strong, and I needed to demonstrate that strength. So what you have happening in the film is, from a child's vantage point, not understanding the gruffness of a father, not understanding the terse kind of behavior some of the fathers can have, and how women will dismiss that as hyper masculine. But it's not an accident. To me, it's a misunderstanding of men that still comes from women, especially via feminism, right? Whatever they don't understand, they list and problematize as toxic. But here's the thing: just like a coach or a gruff teacher, or if you want to go mythological with it, like Saturn, which is what the Saturn entity, even in the cosmology, is supposed to represent the stern teacher. There's a reason that men are known to be stern teachers, because what men do is they trade acknowledgement with respect. In other words, when training a young man, there's a terseness, there's a hardness, and what that process is, and this is something fathers are known for giving sons. I'm going to be hard on you, not because I don't love you, but because I do. And I need to prepare you for the world. I'm not going to be inhumane. I'm not going to be abusive. I'm not trying to stab you and kill you in your sleep to represent my toxic masculinity. I'm going to be harder on you so that you will start to hear my voice in your head and push yourself out of your comfort zone to a new level of productivity. So much so that as you grow, my voice will become your own voice, and you will be able to determine your own future by setting your own goals and know how to prioritize them and have the will to follow them through. This is what the masculine principle does. The masculine principle trains young men how to take in that capability so that they can push past their comfort zone and figure out what they're capable of. And once he figures out what he's capable of and has his own son, guess what he has to pass down? But from the vantage points of women, it's just mean. You just don't love him. No, I don't love him the way women love. That's the difference. It has nothing to do with whether or not I love him. Of course I love my son. I just don't love him the way you do. Because I have a different covenant. I have a different responsibility for my son. I have to prepare him for the world. Now, that doesn't mean that women's love or the nature of it is improper or unuseful. It doesn't mean any of that. It's just, it serves a different purpose. Women are known, especially from childhood, for the notion of unconditional love. A child needs to know that they can be loved throughout anything. And that is an important lesson. But when transitioning into manhood, even as young as 5 years old, the stages moving toward manhood, what men traditionally teach, what fathers traditionally teach, is that in exchange for my acknowledgement, my direct connection with you, You have to discipline yourself to meet what the terms of what I'm setting before you, so that I can teach you how to prioritize, so I can teach you how to apply your will to move yourself out of one condition to move to another. And I can't do that by being jokey, lovey-dovey, kissy like mommy. And it's not that doesn't immediately mean I have to be toxic and violent. That's not what that is. But again, that's what you'll notice with coaches. That's what you'll notice in the military. In order for young men to learn what they're capable of, they need to experience discomfort, because life is discomfort. And if you can't handle your emotions, if you can't handle discomfort to push through to another level, you will not be able to handle life. And here's the rub. The women you get with will not be settled with you because they can't rely on you to be masculine. So here's what women want. Women want you to be lovey-dovey. They want you to express love the way they do so they can recognize it as love, as opposed to actually, examining men and figuring out that men function differently. They want you to emulate women so they can identify what you're doing as loving by their standard, but then they will turn around and punish you if you don't actually apply the qualities that men are supposed to have. The capacity to provide, protect, to be strong, to handle confrontation, to set goals and move the family in a given direction, leadership, all of those qualities that we hear women say they want, while at the same time making demands that you act the way they do, the two don't go together. But when men act the way they act, women interpret it as inherently toxic and problematic. And that's what you're getting in these films. You're going to a He-Man movie, getting written into the script a woman's perspective of how men engage, and it's immediately dismissed as toxic and problematic, because that's the way women see men. As long as we don't emulate what they do and how they are, we must be toxic and bad, and thus we must need women to mommy us into acting properly. But when those young boys don't turn out the way they want them to, then it's somehow men's fault. Even if they pushed him out of families, it's still his fault, even because of his absence. It doesn't matter. But they don't understand in many ways that those two things go together. The terseness that they don't like, it's not inherently abusive. It's part and parcel to how young men become men. It is a process, right? Let me see here. Get this back up. Where'd it go? All right. Let me get back into this. Yeah, we're not going to do all of that. All right. So what else? So there's a point where He-Man is crying, of course, because, men are not emotional unless they cry. And this is something I find women have trouble with the entire time. And I've said this before. We'll get to a point where you can have a family member die, you could have, any of that take place. And unless you're visibly crying the way women identify crying, you must not be in touch with your emotions. But if you actually understood men, he done given you 80 signs about his emotional state long before he may have ever cried. But here's the thing, he may never cry, or he may never cry in front of a woman. But that has nothing to do with his emotional state. That has nothing to do with whether or not he's in touch with emotions. Crying or demonstrably is expressing emotion the way women are known for doing it is not the measure of emotional stability or connection with oneself. It's not. It's how women measure it. So here you have in this movie him crying. Now, I don't have a problem with a man crying. That's not my point. My point is simply that when you force feed it into a movie in order to project to women that he's emotionally in touch with himself, it really, to me, I find it a superficial way of portraying men's emotional spectrum. Because I don't have to cry to be emotional, and many men just don't. And you know what? Here's the thing. It's not always a choice. There were times in my life where I thought I should cry about something, but that's not how I felt. But I emoted in other ways. And those ways were no less valid. But for some reason, we have one standard for emotional expression. And if it doesn't emulate what women deem as the proper standard, it's inherently wrong and toxic. And it's going to lead to a man on a building with a deer rifle taking people out. Bullshit. That is not how this works. So yes, there's a point where He-Man is crying, and there was just a point where it just looked demonstrative and it didn't fit the narrative at all to me. I'm not against showing men crying, but at least write it in a way that men understand. This was not written for men. It was written for women. Yeah, it covered a lot of the tropes of men not being able to communicate, but really, and they kind of went through this with Man at Arms and his daughter, and they went through it with Adam and Tila because Adam had a crush on her, and she apparently didn't reciprocate that crush. But a lot of it was kind of framed around men being incapable of articulating and communicating. Right? They were incapable of being able to say outright what they feel, what's going on with them, and it's part of the trope that's popular in this gynofocal discussion, where men are incapable of expressing themselves emotionally. But the only measure of expressing themselves emotionally is whether they express themselves like women, right? So Man at Arms in particular was not able to speak on his emotions at all, which was nothing like the Duncan character that we grew up watching. He and He-Man cry together, so they could demonstrate to the audience that they had vulnerability that women might appreciate. But here's my problem with that. If you watched a man go to work your entire life and do some shit he didn't want to do to take care of a family, that what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say that in terms of how men express themselves, the fact that he prioritized your well-being over his temporary feelings is a statement about him and his love for you. This takes us back to Denzel Washington and Fences, right? Now, obviously, the standards for fatherhood have changed since the 1950s. Men are expected to be much more emotionally present, but they're still complaining about men, even though we've had this new charge in the last half century of being emotionally present, for not being emotionally present enough. But people aren't actually trying to understand how men functions. They keep trying to get men to function like women. And I'm saying, if you actually took the time to study how men actually engage, there's quite a bit there. And the love they have for people, for family, for friends, for chosen family is demonstrated on a regular basis. But if you're not fluent in the language, you're going to misinterpret all of it. See, what they're doing is they're demanding that men only speak one language, theirs. Otherwise, you have no capability. No, you just don't speak the language. That's really all it comes down to. This really only comes down to. Let me see. Let's see. Yeah, the female character I mentioned that they created, her name was Dion. Never heard of her before. Been watching He-Man for over 40 years. She has multiple scenes, especially during the battle. She has multiple battle scenes where you see her taking out scores of male soldiers by herself. No apparent extensive training of any way. She's not one of the masters of the universe that has a specific skill, like Ram Man or Fisto. She doesn't have a primary weapon. She's just out there with, I mean, I guess the uterus is a weapon unto itself in these kind of series. As long as she's a biological woman, that's a weapon. Pigeon Toad says, geez, Doc, you explain this stuff so thoroughly and in a way for any brother could understand. You're a blessing to us, more specifically me. You express these thoughts better than my angry mind could. Hey, man, I appreciate it. But these are the things they dismiss about men, and it pisses me off. Because if you become fluent in men, or as Patrice O'Neill says, you become fluent in dude, you understand that not only are men fucking human beings, men express all the things you want them to express as women. They just don't express it as women express it. But if you learn to read the language, even in media, you'll find that men will be drawn to the projects more because it's actually more authentic to their experience and how they actually act. And women might actually take it as an opportunity to learn about the men they're sitting next to. But instead, they keep trying to jam men into women's, framework, and it doesn't work. There's a point where Duncan tells his daughter Tila that she's the man he wishes he was. I'm gonna let that sink in. Man at Arms tells Tila that she's the man he wishes he was. This is very reminiscent again of the Kevin Smith Netflix He-Man series, where he doesn't do the same thing word for word, but the sensibility is definitely there, right? This is what we mean by gynofocal. The focus is on women. It's gynocentric. It centers around women and it makes women the primary audience. Both of these projects really do that. So Tila is more of a man than he. And that is the core of understanding manhood, particularly amongst, liberals. The idea is that real men are dislodged from biology. And not only can anybody be a real man, but more often than not, women are more real men than men. However, this doesn't seem to work, though, when you start paying attention to women in social media crying about not meeting men. Because it seems to me that they're not the men that they claim to be. They seem to be looking for the men they claim to want. But if you're more man than the men that are around you, why are you now upset? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. But these are the narratives that we're getting in popular culture. So on one end, we're getting from media that women are better men than men. And then from women themselves on social media, they're crying because they can't find men, they don't have men, and they don't want to be men anymore. It's a whole fucking... Anyway. Let me see. I think I got into a zone writing some of this. I don't remember what that refers to. You got race swaps, gender swaps, as I talked about. Let me see. Yeah, there's several Skeletor-based homoerotic dick jokes about He-Man that were just uncomfortable and made no sense. There's a point where He-Man wants to talk to Skeletor over fight and tries to do so. It just made no sense whatsoever. I mean, there's no way in the world that a Skeletor figure is going to stop and have a conversation with you, but they had to put that in because the traditional notion of men fighting and women talking it seems to be, what they're lauding, what they're going for here. But what they refuse to acknowledge is if you actually pay attention to women or girls for that matter, when it comes to this whole notion of talking, there are different types of violence, and even feminists are real big on talking about different types of violence. Women are not inherently wiser because they talk instead of fight. They fight using talking and using fighting for that matter. You ever grew up around girls, you saw that they fought all the time. So this stereotype that women talk and men fight, that's bullshit. There's no inherent wisdom that women have because they have uteruses. No. They're fucking violent on a number of different scales, as are men, because it's part of the human expression, but men and women express it differently, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it seems to only be a problem when it pertains to what men do more often, whereas women, they want to be able to do all of it and be the exemplar behind what it means to be both men and women. And they prefer to leave grown men in the position of boys so they can justify dominating him and giving him direction. On a sci-fi level, He-Man uses his bracelets the way Wonder Woman did, which was kind of new in the Wonder Woman movie. Her bracelets were a weapon that didn't just deflect bullets. She used them to create shockwaves. It was pretty creative. I'd never seen Wonder Woman really use that way, but they do the same thing with He-Man. And I just kind of thought it was unnecessary. We've already seen Wonder Woman do it. He-Man is a character we haven't seen in live action since 87. And even then, if you go back and watch the 87 movie, he didn't really have any superpowers. He was just a buff, strong dude who was a soldier in a war. That was it. He didn't really lift anything. He didn't, he wasn't, he pushed some dudes off of him, but he wasn't super powered. So there was plenty of opportunity here to show He-Man with powers we may not have actually seen on screen before, but they missed it. And you just see him, kind of emulating Wonder Woman in a particular way. Let me see. So some of my overall points, the film is kind of at war with masculinity while making fun of it at the same time, while positioning boys as bumbling idiots, toxic masculine males, or boys that needed to be mommied. And, the girls were more sensible, they were more intelligent, they were more inherently mature. And if just these men would just listen to them and follow them, everything would be okay. Let me see. It underestimated the need of males and seeks to appeal to women who hate the genre. And that's an interesting thing. It wasn't just that they were appealing to women. They were anticipating that the women they were appealing to would hate the genre. So they made fun of the genre almost as if to bring in women who don't like it to appreciate making fun of it. It really made no sense. It's a 1970s property that's made in the era of Gen Z, where many young writers don't know how to write masculinity anymore without problematizing it. That's the thing. You know, and I've seen this happen in colleges where the feminist critique has been so normalized. You have a generation of people that fundamentally don't know how to write about men without writing about men as a problem that needs to be solved in the best interests of women. That's the only politic they have in regard to gender. And you can see it in how they write men. There's a lot of making fun of gym culture, bro culture. I would argue that, you know, the film itself, not only did it not understand men, it didn't understand the genre. Now, Travis Knight struck me as somebody who was a fan of the series, and there are certain things he does that suggest he has an inside knowledge of He-Man lore and canon, but the outright disrespect for the brand doesn't fit that. Let me see. Okay. Now, at the end of the film, they they start playing the traditional He-Man music from the cartoon, given an orchestral, kind of makeover, which sounded good. But all the way to the end of the film, they kept making fun of Adam. They kept making fun of He-Man. They kept making fun of the entire brand. And it just took something away from it for me. It kind of shamed fans while making fun of them. And, you know, went into the whole naming thing. But like I said, you do see Orko for a brief moment toward the end. And kind of goes into the clip of She-Ra. And you only see her from the back. And you see her holding this gorgeous sword. And I do got to say they did a good job reimagining it. But that's kind of all you see. And it's understandable because they don't give you a big name actress who's going to play She-Ra. So we don't know who they're going to pick as far as that's concerned. But if they get a sequel, we'll see. And they may be able to make enough money to do so. But in a way, if the film bombs, I would not be surprised. Because now what may get it over the hump is the visuals, is the nostalgia, is how many of us have been waiting for a property that appreciated He-Man. The problem, however, if it bombs, it'll be because of its tongue-in-cheek, disrespectful approach to the brand itself. And so if it does well, I would think it would barely do well. If it does poorly, I can't say I'd be surprised. And that only pissed me off more because, you know, I still haven't seen a live action He-Man that took itself seriously enough to honor those who appreciate the brand. Yeah, so, you know, I'm just curious to see if some of y'all go see it. Maybe you'll disagree. I'm curious to hear your thoughts about it. See, Dark Room says, I'm listening in. I'm disappointed. This movie's a big disappointment. I grew up watching He-Man with my brother. See, that was the thing. I grew up watching it with my sister. But we only watched it because right after She-Ra would come on. And, you know, she was excited about that. So we watched both together. You know, yeah. And I agree with you, No News. We could probably do better with AI. That's what's happening. I mean, I played an episode, or not an episode, but an AI clip of Blade killing vampires, and it was funny. It was hilarious. I posted a part 2 in my they used to call it a community tab in my post tab on YouTube. But the reason I posted it wasn't just because it was funny. I posted it because I think more and more we're going to see a move and a shift to AI where the fans are going to make their own because they're tired of waiting for these companies to get it together. You know, that's really what it comes down to. People are getting tired of the agenda. They're getting tired of the companies filtering their own value systems into shit that they shouldn't be. And people are starting to get, and they're getting better. A lot of these AI projects are getting better and better and better. And so the more that happens, you're going to see more and more underground films being made where fans are going to do all the things the studios will not. And it's, you know what? It's worth it. It's absolutely worth it. You know, and it's overdue. Really, it's overdue. Because the time of, you know, companies owning everything to the point where they can successfully silence men has just gone too far. Here, I'll show you what I mean. Okay. All right, so check this out. Let's make sure the sound.
We share the same blood. I simply embraced my destiny.
And look where that destiny got you. Brother!
Play the day, walk the night, time so strong, but heartbreak, or play the day, walk, or play the night, chase a shadow, undertake a sunrise, or break, or play the day.
Thanks for the gift, bro. I love it.
No problemo.
Still explosions, shotgun thunder, ancient divas torn asunder, ashes falling, demons crying, kingdoms of the dark, die. The day walker, midnight world breaker, last hope soul taker. The day.
And, you know, it's what I'm saying. It's funny and all that good stuff. I have no problem playing it, but what it illustrates for me more than anything else is that the fans are getting better at making their own stuff, and they're clearly not having a problem of mixing genres, mixing properties and brands, and making their own content. And I think we're going to see more of it, because every time we wait for these companies to do something, they keep shitting the bed. And the real test is gonna be whether or not Marvel has learned its lesson, you know. But I think so many people have checked out, and I know people have checked out of Star Wars. I mean, that was a $4 billion property that they spent. They bought from George Lucas only to shit the bed by putting in these narratives. And again, I think it's not just that was the agenda of the studios. I think it's also how you have a generation of young writers who've been taught since K through 12. Their value systems have been inundated with this gynocentric kind of approach to things that it's drastically watered down how they even conceptualize manhood. And I think it's become so deeply embedded, they don't know how to write men outside of being problems. So I'm going to end it there. You know, I look forward to hearing you guys' comments as far as, you know, the replay game or whatnot. What do you guys think? If you've seen it, what are your thoughts? It is what it is, but you know, as much as I love the you know, the genre itself, as well as He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, I can't rock with it. But maybe some of you will find something redeeming in it. Maybe you'll like something about it that makes it up for you. That's all well and good. Share your thoughts about it. Let me know. And I appreciate y'all coming through. All right. I will holler at y'all later. Peace. I am here to tell you, brothers, we are not criminals by birth, perennial rapists, incapable intellects, man-children, sperm donors, child support wellsprings, success objects, walking phalluses, ATM machines, lottery tickets, unintelligent henchmen, valueless assassins, pro bono mercenaries, unpaid bodyguards, interchangeable stepfathers, child discipline proxies, unpaid repairmen, workhorses, emotional tampons, or any other socially accepted dehumanizing stereotype. We are thinkers, inventors, innovators, leaders, fathers, and men. Embrace your humanity, know your worth, and extend your time, attention, and resources only to those who genuinely respect you. And remember, your worth is not defined by meeting other people's narcissistic, selfish, and unrealistic needs. You define your worth. Peace.